Imagine for a second that your brain isn't a biological organ. Just forget the gray matter, the neurons, all that stuff
Right.
from biology class.
Okay.
Instead, I want you to picture it as a really high-end computer operating system, super optimized for connection. The interface is slick. Processing speed is just, lightning fast. It's running
It's
perfectly.
that kind of system where you can have like 50 tabs
Yeah,
open, you're streaming music, actually getting work done, and the fan isn't even whirring. It's just effortless.
exactly. And then, one night, while the system is in sleep mode, a catastrophic event forces a massive software update.
An update you didn't ask for, and you certainly didn't consent to. And honestly, it's one that breaks almost every other application you have installed.
You wake up, and on the surface, the interface looks exactly the same. Your coffee machine works, the face in the mirror, it's familiar, you can still tie your shoes. But the back end, the source code that actually runs your life,
It's been completely rewritten.
it's a terrifying concept, but it's also a brilliant framework for understanding something very human.
And that is the central premise of the deep dive we are jumping into today. We are looking at a concept album called The Overwritten Archive by the artist Ti-Fi.
And we should probably clarify right off the bat, this isn't just a collection of sad songs. It's more like a technical manual for a broken mind.
That's a great way to put it. It's taking the abstract feeling of trauma and making it structural.
And to really get why this album hits so hard and why these specific metaphors are used, you have to look at who Ti-Fi was before the music.
Right. This wasn't a professional songwriter, not initially. Their whole identity, their career was being a community manager.
Which for anyone who hasn't worked in tech or gaming might sound like a fun job, hanging out in chat rooms all day, posting memes. But the sources paint a much more intense picture.
Oh, it's grueling. If you know that world, you know it's all about metrics. It's engagement, click-through rates, being always on.
Moderating the vibe of a digital room for thousands of people.
Yeah, it is a high-speed, high-stress environment where your human worth is often, well, measured in data points.
So the mission of this deep dive is to explore how Ti-Fi takes that specific corporate digital language
Algorithms, bandwidth, admin rights, glitches.
and uses it to map out the very messy, nonlinear recovery process of PTSD following a sexual assault.
It's what we're calling a log file of the trauma. And I think we should talk about the tone right away, because people might expect something, acoustic or slow or somber.
Right, the sad person with a guitar trope. You're expecting a ballad.
Exactly. But Ti-Fi went the complete opposite direction. This is cinematic alt-rock. It's like 150 BPM. It is relentless. It's loud. It's layered.
The sources describe it as a wall of sound. It's almost overwhelming to listen to at high volume. It feels anxious just to hear it.
And that's by design. It's mimicking hypervigilance. You know that physical feeling when you're panicked and you just can't relax and every noise sounds too loud?
Yeah.
The music sounds like that. It's panic, but it's catchy.
Which sets the stage perfectly for Act 1 of the album, the system failure, or as they call it, the crash.
Let's boot it up.
The album opens with a track called The Algorithm Changed. And this really captures that morning after feeling we just talked about. But it's not about feeling sad. It's about feeling different, mechanically different.
The metaphor here is the invisible update. The lyrics describe the protagonist waking up and realizing that their internal processing has just shifted. Before, the algorithm was optimizing for joy, maybe connection. Now, it's strictly pivoting to threat detection.
I found that line, pivoting to threat detection, so striking. It's such a cold corporate way to describe something so visceral, so fearful. Why use that language?
Because it validates the involuntary nature of it. I mean, that's one of the hardest things for survivors to grapple with. There's this sense of, why am I acting like this? Why can't I just be normal?
Why am I flinching?
Exactly. And this song argues, no, you didn't choose this. Your safety protocols overrode your personality. The system prioritized survival over connection without asking for your admin password.
It's like being locked out of your own settings menu. You're watching your brain do things you don't want it to do, but you can't stop the script.
Precisely. And that lack of control leads right into the next track, just for the metrics, which takes a really counterintuitive turn. You'd think after a trauma, someone would just want peace, quiet.
Right, you'd want to retreat. But the artist sings, I'd rather be stressed than feeling this dead. That really stopped me. It feels contradictory.
This is where we have to distinguish between healthy stress and toxic trauma. Or maybe more specifically, the difference between the rat race and the void.
Okay, unpack that for us. because stress is usually seen as the enemy in these conversations.
Well, think back to that community manager life. It's chaos, right? PR crises at 2 in the morning, trolls to fight, metrics to chase. That is stress, yes, but it's external. It's a fire you can put out.
And there's a rush to that, isn't there? Your heart is racing because you're doing something.
Yeah.
You have agency.
Exactly. Ti-Fi compares that rush to the dead silence of trauma, the void. The artist admits to missing the rat race because after the assault, the only KPI they're tracking is their own heart rate. They're just existing. They would trade the safety of the void for the danger of the job in a heartbeat.
Because the stress made them feel alive.
It did, and that just highlights how isolating that internal silence is. It's not peace, it's emptiness. It's the absence of a signal.
Which brings us to what I think is the anchor of the first act. The track, the pinned post.
This is a crucial moment. This is the only song on the entire record that explicitly names the sexual assault. Everywhere else, it's just the crash or the glitch.
Why the specificity here? Why drop the metaphor for this one song?
Because it reflects the mechanism of fixation. On social media, a pinned post is the first thing you see. It doesn't matter what you posted today or what you're doing right now.
The pinned post is always at the top. It defines the profile.
Exactly. It's such a vivid analogy for intrusive thoughts. You wake up and boom, it's there. You try to think about breakfast and it's still there.
Your brain has prioritized this traumatic event as the single most important piece of survival data. So every time the protagonist refreshes the feed of their mind, hoping to see their plans for the day, the system serves up the trauma first. It says, review this, make sure this doesn't happen again.
And there's that heartbreaking bridge where they try to delete it. They're frantic, just trying to remove the post.
And what happens?
The system returns an error. Administrative privileges required. It just perfectly explains why moving on isn't about willpower. You literally don't have the permissions to remove the file. Your survival instinct has locked it in place.
So that's Act 1. The system has crashed, the update is installed, and the trauma is pinned to the top of the feed. Now we move into Act 2, which the sources call the glitch and the lag.
Right. This section is less about the event itself and more about the exhausting reality of trying to live a normal life while running on this broken software.
And this is where the metaphors get really relatable, I think. Take the track screenshots. We all do this. We hoard digital memories.
And we do, but Ti-Fi flips it. The song attacks this fallacy of what we can call static nostalgia. We think, if I have the data, the old texts, the photos, I have the connection.
I have the receipts, as they say.
Right. But for the survivor, looking at those old messages is painful. Ti-Fi calls screenshots a cage for my memory, because looking at a text from 3 years ago just proves that the person who sent it, the you from before the crash, effectively died.
That's heavy. So it's like looking at a ghost. You see the timestamp, you see the joke you made, but you can't access the feeling of being that person anymore.
Exactly. It highlights the disconnection between the you then and the you now. You have the data, but you've lost the access key to the emotion, which leads directly into the next problem, processing power. This is the track Low-Res Memory.
I love this concept. We've all had that moment where the internet is slow and a 4K video drops down to like 144p.
Yeah.
Just a blurry, pixelated mess.
Now apply that to your life history. The insight here is really about cognitive fog. Because that pinned post, the trauma, is taking up, say, 90% of the brain's RAM.
There's almost no energy left to render other memories.
So the happy memories, the career wins, the parties, the brain has to compress them just to keep running. They become thumbnails. And the tragedy, which the lyrics point out, is that the bad times are in high definition while the good times are pixelated.
It's not that you're broken, it's a resource management issue. You're trying to run high-end software on 10% battery.
But the world doesn't stop. You still have friends. You still have to go to the coffee shop. How do you manage that?
You use an auto-reply.
Which is the title of the next track.
Yeah.
And it perfectly defines dissociation. The protagonist is physically present.
But the user is logged out.
Yes. They describe themselves as a customer service bot wearing my face. You're running a script. Haha, yeah, totally. That's crazy.
We've all been there, I think, giving those canned responses when we're tired. But this is extreme. It's a defense mechanism.
A powerful one. You're giving automated responses to keep the connection alive without actually being vulnerable. Because if you were vulnerable, if you're really engaged, the system might crash.
Which brings us to mute button. This is what happens when the bot fails, right?
This is sensory overload. When the input volume of life, the noise, the questions, the demands, when it hits the red line, the system has to shut down to protect the hardware.
So when someone just withdraws, or stops texting back, Or ghosts their friends.
It's not rudeness. It's a safety feature. It's hitting mute to stop the feedback loop before the speakers blow out. It's the blue screen of death for social interaction.
But even when you mute the world, you can't always mute your own brain.
Yeah.
And that leads to doom scrolling. Now, usually we mean scrolling through terrible news on Twitter.
But Hi-Fi flips it. This isn't about Twitter. This is about doom scrolling your own brain. It's the addiction to the trauma loop.
Swiping up on our own nightmare? That is a terrifying image. Why would the brain do that?
It's trying to solve the trauma. You replay the event over and over, analyzing details, hoping that this time you'll find a different outcome. Maybe if I play it back one more time, I'll see a way out.
But you never do. You're just burning emotional battery on an unsolvable problem.
Right. So we've crashed, we're glitching, we're running on auto-reply, and doom-scrolling our own pain. It feels pretty hopeless at this point in the album.
Feels like the system is bricked.
It does. But this brings us to Act 3, the reboot.
Finally. But how? If the hardware is fried, what's the fix?
Well, be careful, it's not a magical fix. This is the shift from passive victimhood to active agency. And it starts with a song called New Content.
This track introduces a concept from therapy called behavioral activation, but Hi-Fi calls it manual labor.
And that's perfect. The insight here is you cannot fix the timeline by scrolling back. You can't delete the pinned post just by staring at it. The only way to push it down the feed is to post something new on top of it.
But the lyrics admit that it feels fake. Going for a walk, getting coffee. It feels forced.
At first, yes. But the new content strategy says you have to flood the zone with new data points. You have to force the system to process safe, neutral events to dilute the trauma. You have to act to feel better rather than waiting to feel better to act.
So you're basically spamming your own brain with normalcy until it sticks.
Exactly. And once you start generating that new content, you start to get a little power back, which leads to the anthem of the album, Admin Rights.
This is the turning point. The music shifts here. It gets a bit more anthemic. The protagonist hacks back in to their own account.
But notice the nuance, and this is why the album is so smart. They aren't deleting the history. The crash is still in the logs. You can't erase what happened.
So it's not about amnesia? It's not pretending it didn't happen?
No, it's about moderation. The lyrics scream about unbanning happiness and muting the shame. For so long, the trauma was the moderator, flagging every joy as suspicious. Now, the protagonist is taking back admin status. They set the rules.
It's such a moment of empowerment. But, and I think this is what makes the album really stick, the ending isn't a return to the status quo. It's not everything is back to normal.
No. The final track of the main album is Logged Out, and it's bittersweet.
The protagonist decides not to return to their old job as a community manager. They don't go back to the digital rat race they used to love.
This is radical acceptance. The metaphor is session expired. The hardware has changed so much that the old role just doesn't fit anymore. And the takeaway here is that leaving isn't a defeat.
It feels like a victory, actually. The lyrics talk about walking into the analog night, leaving the performative, metric-driven world behind.
It's a deliberate choice to close the laptop, to say, I am not an operating system anymore, I am a person.
But the story doesn't quite end there. There's a bonus track, and honestly, this is the one that gave me chills. It's called Dead Chat.
This track jumps forward 2.5 years. The protagonist logs back into that old server, the community they used to manage, just to see what happened.
And it's empty. 30 months of dust. The last message posted was from the day they left. It's a ghost town.
This serves a dual purpose. First, it's tragic. It shows the ripple effects. The violence didn't just hurt a person, it killed a community. The dead chat is a physical scar left on the internet.
But there's a flip side, right? For the character, this seems weirdly healing.
Yes, it's validation. For a long time, the protagonist probably wondered, was I replaceable? Did I matter?
If I leave, will the algorithm just replace me?
Exactly. The empty server proves that they were the power source. The community didn't run on algorithms. It ran on their love, their humor, their labor. When they left, the lights went out.
That is heavy, but also incredibly validating. It proves their worth wasn't the metrics. It was the human connection.
Absolutely. It reclaims their value from the machine.
So we've gone from the crash, through the glitches and the lag, to the reboot and the final logout. When we step back and look at the Overwritten archive as a whole, what's the big takeaway for you? Why does this specific metaphor work so well?
I think what makes this work is that it takes the cold, clinical language of technology, which we usually use to distance ourselves from emotion, and uses it to validate the messy human experience of trauma.
It makes the glitch feel less like a personal failure.
Exactly. If you think of your struggle as a system error or a bandwidth issue, it becomes manageable. It's not a character flaw, it's a broken operating system. And systems can be rebooted, they can be patched, they can be upgraded.
I love that. It turns the shame into a technical problem. And it really makes you think about your own internal software.
It does. And I'd leave you, the listener, with this question. If your mind is an operating system, what legacy code or pinned posts are you letting run in the background? What old trauma or shame is consuming your bandwidth right now? And maybe, just maybe, is it time to check your own admin privileges?
A powerful thought to end on. That was our deep dive into Ti-Fi's The Overwritten Archive. Thank you so much for listening. We encourage you to take a breath, maybe log out for a bit, and go enjoy the analog world. We'll see you next time.